Hey up everybody, welcome back to the Audi Cycling YouTube channel, where today we're going to be doing a preview of the Velogames Volta Catalunya, which this year has some pretty strong riders in there for the GC contest, including Primoz Roglic and Remco Evenepoel, but I also have some good suggestions for some 6 and 4 point riders which will be crucial to your team's success this year. So let's take a look at the riders. Of course, as I said, Roglic and Evenepoel are the big favourites of this race, and that is reflected in their prices at 26 and 24 credits respectively. I do think that both of these riders are good choices. I think that you could pick both of them, or you could pick one of them. I probably wouldn't recommend picking neither of them, just because I am fairly confident that one of them will win. I don't really know which way round it's going to be. I think it could really be either of them, but I think that you should definitely be picking one of them. Picking both of them could be risky. We saw that in Paris-Nice. Those of you who picked Vingegaard and Pogačar probably didn't do as well as people who just picked Pogačar, for example. So just bear in mind that perhaps both of them aren't going to, picking both of them isn't going to be the best strategy. Perhaps it might be better to pick one and then spread your points out between some other GC riders who aren't the main favourites but will fill out the other positions in the top 10, including maybe Adam Yates at 18. However, I don't think that Yates is the greatest value, considering that he didn't look fantastic at Tirreno Adriatico, and you also have to note that in UAE's press release, which they've released for Catalunya, they say that Almeida is going to be their leader and that Yates and Soler will be supporting him, but will have their own opportunities, which basically means that they're going to be working for Almeida. So Yates at 18 might not be worth it. Almeida at 16 I think is better value. So I think that Almeida's a good one. He could certainly finish in third place in this race if you consider that Roglic and Evenepoel will likely be taking first and second. I think that Almeida's looking really strong, second at Tirreno, so certainly in a good bit of form at the moment. Carapaz is an interesting one because we haven't seen him racing a lot this year. We've seen him doing the Ecuadorian National Champs, and we've also seen him do Milano-Torino, so neither of them particularly great gauges of form, considering that the National Champs was quite a while ago. And I think that Carapaz on the new team, he could certainly come out flying and do really well here, but in my opinion, I think it's safer to pick an Almeida or a Landa as well, just because we've seen how well they're doing recently. Landa, I think, is a good choice. He's looked really good this year, very consistent, always usually inside the top 10 in GC, and was looking pretty decent at Tirreno, and I don't see any reason why that shouldn't be the case again in this race. Maybe a lot of these riders, because they're coming from Tirreno, might be a little bit tired, so perhaps that gives an advantage to Evenepoel, for example. Bardet was looking okay at Paris-Nice, but probably isn't the greatest value for money rider, but should still finish in the top 10. Bernal I probably wouldn't pick, just because I haven't seen enough of him, to be honest with you. I still know how he's recovering from that crash which he had. It was just over a year ago. He just still doesn't seem to be the Bernal of old just yet, so I probably wouldn't recommend that. I think that Ciccone is actually the best 14-point rider, alongside maybe Hindley, but we'll get to Hindley in a second. Ciccone looked really good at Tirreno. He seems to have improved his kind of mountain top sprint, and I think that could be very crucial in a couple of these stages, especially up to, say, La Molina. He could be a really dangerous threat there, and I think that Ciccone could certainly finish top 5 in this race. Hindley is an interesting one just because he never seems to do brilliantly in stage races, which is peculiar, but he always seems to do well in Grand Tours. Saying that, in stage races, he always seems to get a couple of good stage results, but is always let down by his TT. However, there isn't a TT in this race, so therefore he could certainly be a good choice. And I think that Hindley could certainly be a bit of a surprise, perhaps one which not a lot of people are going to be picking. O'Connor just hasn't looked that great recently, finished outside the top 10 in Tirreno, not a big fan of that. Geraint Thomas, again, usually only does well on the Grand Tours or the build-up race before the Grand Tour, so I wouldn't really expect him to be doing much here. Haig and Hayter are both good choices, apart from the fact that Haig is going to be a domestique in this race, and Hayter won't have that many great opportunities to sprint, probably stage 1, then there's another pure sprint stage, and then I think it's stage 5 or something, there's another potential sprint, so Hayter could be a decent one, but I think there are other sprinters who are cheaper who I would much rather pick. Somebody like Groves, for example, would be a really good one. If Groves doesn't come away with a stage win, I'd be quite surprised. He's probably the fastest sprinter here. Chavez, I don't really know what to expect from him. There's Carapaz here, there's Chavez, there's Iran. I don't really know who they're going for. I think it's probably just safe just to steer clear, because Chavez really only pulls out a couple of good performances every year, and this isn't really the time where he does it, so I'm not really thinking of picking. Chavez Hurt will just be a domestique. Tobias Harland Johannesson, I think, finished something like 6th or 7th in GC in this race last year, but he was a 6-point rider then. Now he's 10 points. I haven't seen the form this year from him to really be warranting picking him, so I'd probably say that the best 10-point rider is actually Gino Mader or Luke Plapp. Mader looked incredible at Paris-Nice, and I think that he should really be on a lot of people's teams, considering that he is going to be co-leader alongside Landa. That's what they say in their press release, Bahrain. So I think that Mader's an absolute almost must-have for 10 credits. And I think that Plapp honestly provides the best GC option for Ineos Grenadiers. He was pretty good at the UAE Tour. And, you know, he's really competing with Geraint Thomas, Bernal, Ben Tullet. And I just don't really think that either of them are particularly great GC choices. I think that Plapp is probably the best one. And I think that they just provide a greater ceiling of points compared to a sprinter like Groves, who will only really contest a couple of stages realistically. Soler is always a bit of a maverick. You never know what he might do. He could be really good, or he could be really shit, to be honest. Itablux is another interesting one because there is Hindley, and I'm not sure what Itablux's role is going to be here. A young, sensational talent. We've seen these guys in the past really launching some surprises, but he hasn't looked that great this year. One of his best performances was in Oman, where he finished like 9th in GC, which isn't that great, to be honest with you. And then he did the Fon Delorme and the Fon Ardèche Classic, where he didn't do that great either. So however much I want to pick him, I can't confidently say that he is a good choice. Enric Mas isn't here, so Verona will probably be the GC leader, so he might be worth considering. Then you have Bouchard. He might go for a somewhat GC option if O'Connor's not doing that great. Coquard is the bookie's favourite right now for stage 1, so make of that what you will. I think Coquard is very much like Groves, except that he's 2 credits cheaper, so I think that Coquard provides a better value for money pick over Groves, to be honest with you. Who else we have? Hostetter would be this sprinter for Arkea, so long as his handlebar doesn't fall off like it did the other day. And Deleuze Clon would be another good rider for stage 1, but he suffers from the fact that a lot of these stages are either too hard for him or too easy, so he's really kind of lacks that middle ground. There's only maybe the last stage really suits him, actually. The last 2 stages really suit Clon, but you have to wait for him to really shine until then. And he's also competing with Maxime Van Hils, who's a little bit further down. They both as kind of a similar rider, so you might get unlucky and pick the wrong one. Corbin Strong would be a safer choice, but hasn't looked that great recently. I was about to say strong, that would be such an awful pun. He hasn't looked that great recently, but he will be the designated sprinter for Israel Premier Tech, so a bit safer, but in terms of actual physical capabilities, probably not as good. Quinn Simmons has been getting in loads of breaks recently, which, you know, is very promising, but will he just be tied down to help Ciccone? I don't really know, but I think that Simmons is still quite an exciting rider. Oscar Onley will be helping Romain Bardet, but I think I still expect some pretty good things from him. Aina Rubio, of course, won up the Jabal Jais, but I was from like a break kind of early move, so I'm not really sure if I'll expect the same thing. But saying that, I think he should still finish okay in GC, to be honest. On to the 6-point riders. Clément Berthet finished 15th and 16th in his last 2 stage races that he's done in GC, that is. So a pretty good one there. I think that's a pretty safe one just for like a top 20. Nicola Conchi, I think he did pretty good in Algarve. He finished 21st in GC, I think, but that was with a TT, which of course he isn't very good at, so perhaps he could come top 20 in GC here, which for a 6-point rider, that's not too bad. Nicholas Egg did good in the Tour of Oman. I think he finished top 15 in GC there, so he might be the choice there if Harland Johannesson doesn't work out. Then you also have Felix Gall, but again, he might be a domestique for Ben O'Connor. Jonas Glegard won the Mountains classification in Paris-Nice, so he might be tempted to do the same again here. Tobias Harland Johannesson's twin brother, Anders, if you wanted to have the brotherly connection there. Victor Lagalotti, the Monegasque, he's been looking actually really strong recently, and I think that he could finish top 20 in GC if he continues his really good form, but it might be safer to pick somebody like Conchi, or actually my favourite 6-point rider, not because I think he'll get the most points, but just very excited to see what he can do, is Lenny Martinez, the pure climber, kind of like Kenny Ellison back in the day. And I'm really excited to see what he can do, because there's no Gaudu, no Madouas, no Arnaud Demar, so therefore Groupama FDJ riders are going to be let off the leash, and I can't wait to see what Lenny could do. I think he could finish probably top 20 in GC realistically, but maybe a top 15 if things go really well. Milan Menton is the sprinter for Lotto Destiny. He's in scintillating form. I think the last 5 races he's done, the lowest he's finished is 7th. So he's looking super strong. You've got Monique, the climber for Lotto Destiny, whether he might go for GC. He didn't do that great in Oman, but perhaps he could bounce back and do better here. Nons Peters won Trofeo La Gueglia recently, but that was in really piss wet conditions. But Catalunya is known for having pretty piss wet conditions, so maybe he might be a good one. Ruben Thompson is another climber for Groupama. He'll have his own chances. Ben Tullett, an interesting one. I think he'll be a GC rider someday. Whether to this race might be it, I'm not too sure, but I'm looking forward to seeing what he could do. I really hope that he gets some chances to himself. Leonard van Eetveld looked good in some of the Mallorca Challenge races, but hasn't really shown that same form in his recent races, so whether that's still a good choice or not. I think that there's also Klon, Van Hills, Monique. It's difficult to tell who Lotto are going to be working for. Clément Venturellini is a very safe one. Good enough sprinter, will probably pick you up 2 or 3 top 10s in this race. Pretty safe. Juan Dahl finished 18th in GC at Volta Algarve, so that's quite a good one, but he will likely be working for Itablux and Hindley, so bear that in mind. But he is also a very exciting rider. And then in terms of 4-point riders, you'll probably be needing a lot of these. Will Barton looked good in the Gran Camino, which Vingegaard won. I think he finished quite high in GC, say 4th or so. I'm quite looking forward to seeing what he can do, considering that there's no mass here, so therefore he should have his own opportunities. Mark Brustenger, in theory, should be the sprinter for Trek, but there's only really one stage that he will compete in, so he's really a one and done kind of guy. Whether he'll actually finish the race, I don't really know. Then you have UAE riders like Finn Fisher Black, but there's also Ivo Oliveira a bit further down. They'll get assist points for Zhao and also for Adam Yates. And I think UAE should probably win Team GC when you look at the number of climbers they have. So quite a safe option there, I think, for assist points. A little bit further down, there's Ivo Oliveira. You also have Callum Scottson. I think Callum Scottson is my favourite 4-point rider. He finished, I think it was like top 15 in GC at UAE Tour. And Jaco Alula in their press release on their website say that he will be alongside Filippo Zana their GC choices, and if they lose time then they'll go in the breakaway, so I think that's an absolute no-brainer. Callum Scotson's probably the best 4-point rider, unless you maybe count Peter Seri, who will probably get loads of assist points for Remco Evenepoel, and they have a pretty strong team, so they'll finish quite high up in Team GC as well, I reckon. This is the team that I have at the moment. It's just got 4 4-point riders, and then it's got some like 5 GC riders. You could swap things around and maybe not choose Evenepoel or Roglic, and you could go with a Landa and like an Almeida or something like that instead, and try and spread your points out a bit more. But from what I've learnt this year, it's usually better just to pick the favourites. But let me know in the comments down below what kind of teams you're thinking of going with. And all that is left to say is to stay safe out there, and I'll see you in the next video. Salut!